Rosemary, can we start with you? My name is Janey. This is Ashely, my daughter. And we are absolutely interested in a story or a couple of stories or something you can tell us about Journeys to Glasgow. Can I ask, if you don't mind, what age range you might be in?
I'm 75.
Really? You're fabulous for 75.
Thank you, my dear.
I want your skin.
Oh, I want your body. Don't put that in tape.
The lights on.
Oh God.
It's been is that normal? Yeah, that wee thing there is flashing occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's just when it's loud.
Oh, okay. Rosemary, tell me about your favourite journey to Glasgow, or a journey.
Yeah. A journey to Glasgow. God, I'm trying to think of journeys to Glasgow.
Think of a journey, one that was really a story that you've got about being in a journey, something that sticks out. If you were at a dinner party and somebody said to you, what would be the most significant journey that you ever had in your life? What would it be?
To Glasgow.
Was your family, you've got a really interesting surname, was your family born here?
Yeah. Well, I'm Scottish.
Yes.
And that's my married name is Piacentini.
Right.
My own name was Thompson.
Right.
So my husband's parents.
Did you ever
were
go and
Italian.
visit his family in Italy?
Well, he's a Scottish Italian.
Yes.
So he was born here.
Yeah.
And
did you ever visit them over there?
yeah, well, not really. No. I've visited Italy on a number of occasions, but never visited my husband's family.
No. And how was the journey? How did you get to Italy?
How did I get to Italy?
Was it a flight or a bus?
Yeah, when I was going to Italy, probably the first time I went when I was about 17 or 18, and I flew.
What was it like back then?
Well, actually, flying to Italy, it was okay.
Was it as much security as there is now?
No.
No, you just walked up to the plane off a bus and jumped on?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, it wasn't, I think, travelling by plane now, just because of all the things that have happened in terms of terrorism and different things, the security's much greater, and it's really quite a hassly
forget about an aeroplane
situation, travelling by plane, and mostly in recent years I've been travelling to Canada or America to visit family or over there, and I find now that it's not
it's
a
very
pleasurable
intense, isn't it? It's
experience. You honestly feel as if.
But Rosemary, you're hiding
a secret. You're a criminal.
You're hiding a secret.
Indeed.
You are indeed.
I'm hiding a secret.
You're hiding a secret because I heard you were a clippy.
Well, that's true.
That entails a million journeys. Can you tell me something interesting about being a clippy? And were you in a clippy? Explain to what a clippy is.
Right. Well, a clippy is a person on the bus who collects the fares.
Right.
Like when I was a clippy,
what year was that about?
That was about 1958.
Right. Well, that was the height of the sexy rock and roll years, Rosemary.
Yeah, but I wasn't a sexy rock and roller.
I can see you in bobby socks. Come on.
I was that came later. But I have to say, I think I probably did look quite sexy.
I think you did.
I think I probably did, because I had this navy blue uniform that was okay. It was okay, and you also wore a big cap.
Right.
It was navy with a red trim. And at that time, I was going through a dyeing the hair blonde phase.
Good.
So I had quite long hair that could have been up in a beehive, but you couldn't wear your hair in a beehive with the cap. So your hair was kind of falling round your shoulders, and it was dyed blonde.
Of course,
my natural colour was brown, I think.
And where was your bus journey?
And the bus journey was in Paisley,
right?
Because I lived in Paisley, and I was doing the job as a student. It wasn't a regular job that I had. It was every student's dream to get a job in the buses during the summer holidays, because the money was really good.
Right.
It was either that or working, I think, in the subway, as far as I remember. But to get a job in the buses was kind of an achievement.
What was the most memorable
journey? Group of people that I was part of, with the students at university.
Wonderful.
I was at university.
What did you study?
At that time I was doing an arts degree.
See, you're hiding, you're telling us that this just, no, I don't have many journeys. She was a sexy blonde bombshell that was studying art.
No, arts, MA, languages.
Oh, right, sorry.
History and French. I was doing that at that time.
That'd be handy in the buses to be.
It was very, very handy. So I was working on the bus. The bus route was, I think it was just the Paisley buses.
Right.
We might. My memory is going a bit here. It might have been Paisley to Glasgow, but I think it was just local, the local buses in Paisley. So
most memorable night on the buses? Was there anything extravagant that happened? Something exciting? A story you could tell? Did you meet a man? Did you get chatted up?
Well,
With your blonde hair.
with the blonde hair and the cap. I haven't got the happiest memories actually of working on the buses because I actually only did it for about 6 weeks during the summer, and for the first 4 weeks of the 6 weeks you were kind of training.
All right.
Right? So that meant that you were doing an early shift for the 4-week period, which in turn meant that you were getting up about 5 in the morning to do a 6 o'clock start, and your shift I think was 6 till 2. And what I do remember was when I came home at 2:30 in the afternoon, I just used to fall asleep in the chair. But in between times, working the buses was okay. I can't remember getting lots of laughs.
But Rosemary, it was the height of rock and roll. It was 1958. It's when everybody stopped listening to sort of big bands, and you've now stopped listening to the post-war music, and we're now entering Elvis and the Beatles. I mean, that's a really poignant time.
It was, but yeah, it was.
But this was a bus.
But I was in the bus in Paisley. And that's right. I mean,
you know what?
Elvis,
You were missing it.
I still love Elvis.
You were missing it all because you were on a bus.
I was on a blinking bus, and there was a lot of pressure. And as I was saying out there, the biggest pressure for me on the bus, the biggest pressure was that I was really a slow learner.
Right.
And I was very slow at collecting people's fares on the bus. And I used to get anxious.
Right.
And somebody would give me the money for their fare, and I would give them the same money back. So I was actually very popular.
Loved. Yes.
People queued up for my bus. Because without realising I was doing it, I was letting them on for nothing. But
there's sexy blonde Rosemary that gives us a free ride on the bus.
Now that sounds naughty, but anyway,
it's not.
Anyway, the bus driver would put you under pressure because he said that I was so slow taking fares that he didn't have time for a fag at the depot.
It's becoming a theme, this fag on the bus.
The fag on the bus, but he didn't have time for his fag at the depot. So that was pressure. And I was saying out there, I do remember one day the bus was taking off from Paisley Cross, and I was so anxious to, to be in the good books of the bus driver that I kind of bailed the bus for him to go on, and 2 old ladies were still trying to get on. And nothing happened. It wasn't too serious, but one of them was almost dragged along the road.
So nothing happened in your bus journeys at all?
This is one instant that sticks in my mind, where all the passengers are shouting, "Hold the bus!" That's where the term originated, "Hold the bus," and or "Stop the bus." And somebody says, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And they all say, "There's a wee woman trying to go on the bus, and she bailed the bus too soon." So that wasn't a very pleasant experience, but the driver did get his cigarette at the depot, and that's what counted.
Fantastic.
But anyway, I only worked in the buses over that summer, and then I was saying my exam results came out, from the university, and I hadn't done terribly well in my exams, so my mother said, "I think you should give up that job and study for your exams." So it was a short-lived career as a bus conductress.
It was a short-lived career. It was a story we thought was going to go nowhere, but it actually did have a lot of excitement in it. Terry, you seem to be more well-travelled.
Can I say I was also known as Sadie the Clippy?
Sadie the Clippy.
Sadie the Clippy. God knows.
Sadie?
Well, Sadie Thompson was a kind of a famous film character
right.
all those years ago. I think Rita Hayworth
Right.
An actress made a film, and I think it was The Loves of Sadie Thompson. So from there, it became Sadie, and because my name was Thompson, I became Sadie the Clippy. But anyway, that was
good. That was interesting.
Okay, very interesting. We're all going to sleep.
No, it's not. It was good. I enjoyed it. It gave us an insight.
I'll now hand you over to
Terry.
The gorgeous Terry.
Terry, you well travelled because apparently you are or were an air hostess. Is that what? Now,
Do you prefer steward or hostess?
Stewardess.
Pan-American was stewardess.
Wow, you were a Pan Am girl.
The world's most experienced airline. Right.
Terry, what year was this, if you don't mind me asking?
19 must have been about 1960.
Wow. And you had to be single then, didn't you?
Yes.
And no kids.
No kids, no men, no nothing. Very strict about the uniform.
Celibate, indeed.
Now, were the pilots quite frisky? No, is that
a lot
just
of them at that time were Second World War pilots.
That's true.
Because when you see films and stuff about Pan America, they're all like suave, sexy men who are trying to beg
they loved themselves. They were king.
Yeah. And what was your first ever journey on a flight?
As a stewardess.
I missed it.
Yay! Tell us this story.
Well, I got kind of confused because in those days there was no mobile phones. We found ourselves an apartment in Manhattan because somebody said Manhattan is a place to live. So we found this apartment in Manhattan whom Sal Mineo had lived in.
I know who Sal Mineo is.
Right? Well, he'd lived in it.
It
cost us a fortune.
We didn't
Hang on, there's a woman staying in an apartment in the 1960s. This is another hub of greatness. You were on a bus and Paisley at this point.
I remember when the Beatles arrived in New York.
Wow!
And I said to the security man, what are they like? And he said, them looks like undesirables. Their hair's too long. I wouldn't let them in.
That's amazing. So you were in New York when the Beatles arrived. You were at the whole start of that whole
And I was
shift.
in Dallas waiting for a plane coming out when Kennedy was assassinated.
Wow! This is the story of
That was awful actually, because I turned the telly on just to get the time, and then it was all sort of happening. And I was saying to Emma once, I said I went downstairs and there were men crying, and I remember this man saying to me, I didn't agree with his politics, but he was an American, because Americans are very patriotic,
Can I just back up a wee second? You were in Dallas the day President...
Not Dallas, I was in Houston waiting for a plane coming out of Dallas. We were picking the plane up.
Yeah.
So we didn't know whether our plane was going to get out because they would close it down,
That's amazing. And what was the vibe like then? Was everybody...
awful. And then we got on the plane, as we were flying here, it was announced that they'd got somebody. Remember, they caught quite quickly.
So that was from America to here, and they
here.
announced on the plane that they'd caught somebody who'd shot Kennedy.
That's a great story. That's a very prevalent story. So you're on an aeroplane. What age are you, can I ask?
I would be 21 at the time.
21. 21 is very young still, Terry.
Yeah.
And you're flying out of a city, of a country that's just lost its president.
And then they announced that Idlewild would no longer be known as Idlewild. It would become JFK.
Wow.
So they renamed the airport,
Oh, that's amazing.
Just remember that now, but I remember that's when Idlewild...
Suddenly your blonde bombshell on a bus really does pale
right
into significance, doesn't it? But that's awesome, Terry, because that's like you were there at a time shift of history. And so when you flew into Glasgow, did you fly straight to Glasgow or London?
They only ever flew into Prestwick.
Right, that's right.
Where Elvis visited.
Yeah.
That's right. But you didn't fly Pan Am.
So you, Pan Am...
He was on what they called a MATS charter, because all the American troops used to get taken over to Europe. And that was a nightmare if you had to do a MATS charter, because they were fed from the minute they got on the plane to they got off the plane. And they all had loads of kids, because if you were in the army or the forces, that was a place to be, because you got all the medical attention free, and your children educated and all the rest of it. So they would do a MATS charter. But the great thing about doing a MATS charter was they had what they called the PX, and in the PX you could buy stuff.
Explain what a PX is, please.
It's I suppose it's like a special shop that only military personnel could shop in. But because we were there, they let us in. And I remember I wanted Samsonite luggage. I thought if I had a set of Samsonite luggage, I'd made it.
So is this like what the, the air shopping they do now?
This was like the duty free of your day.
Well, I mean, there was duty free, but this was because we would fly these American charters.
So how did you feel when you flew home? You flew home, you heard that the president had died, the airport had been changed while you were in mid-air, you got into London, obviously, you got into Prestwick.
No, we come into London that time.
That's right. Obviously the whole country was now aware of what
happened. Because it was it not, I mean, it happened in the afternoon there, so it was really quite late at night here, wasn't it?
That's right.
I remember it was about 6:30 in the evening that we heard. I can remember.
Were you on the bus at that point?
No, I was doing the ironing and listening to the radio, and I heard that President Kennedy had been shot. And I phoned my husband, who was working in a fish and chip shop, and I was under strict orders on a Friday night never to phone, because that was the busiest night of the week. And he said, "Why are you phoning?" I said, "Because President Kennedy's been shot." I thought it was sufficiently important to interrupt a serving of fish.
Of course it was. He's an Italian Catholic, he needs to know that.
But I just went, it was about 6:30, 7, and that I remember it was a Friday evening. It's weird how things go, but there are
things you remember.
So that was the time then, and then it was announced about 10 minutes later that he had died. Anyway, so
so when you came, that must have been one of the most bizarre things in the world when you saw how the American people reacted, because there's never been, even when Princess Diana died, it was not even that joint national outpouring. I mean, I've heard stories about a girl who was driving to her father's funeral on the day President Kennedy was shot, and she saw the people in the street crying, and she thought it was for her dad, and people would literally just stop in the street and cried. It must have been such a bizarre feeling,
because nobody gets shot in those days, I think, apart from the cowboy pictures. I mean,
that's right.
But also he represented a hope for
it was
the
a whole new, that was like their royal family.
Yes.
And it was the beginning, and she was so glamorous and beautiful, and then these two little children. And
can I ask you one other question? And I know that I'm taking up your time, but I'd love to know it, because I am sure everybody has asked you this question about journeys. Have you ever been on a flight that got into trouble and you were terrified? Like really bad turbulence?
No. I remember one night it was quite rough, and the stewardess that I was with panicked.
Because I've been on a flight and the stewardess panicked as well, and that's why
she panicked. And it was a shame, because she was really tired, this girl. She shouldn't have been flying.
Yeah.
And she really got upset. In fact, I remember it was a flight to Rome, because there was 2 bishops on it, and we used to say it was
that's always a bad sign.
They got absolutely steaming. There were like 2 kids in their holidays. Well, they'd never been out of America. Here they were going to Rome. And then the free drink and the chat. We had a great time. I don't know where we poured them off,
I heard that there is a story about you misguiding passengers onto the wrong plane.
Tell us about that, Janey.
Tell us about that.
They used to do a thing in those days where the most junior member of staff had to stay with the passengers in a transit stop, because in those days they really looked after passengers. They wouldn't have just said, "Off you go to terminal," whatever it was. And it was in Frankfurt, and I got sent with the passengers. I don't know how long we were there for. So this lady started to tell me about, it was when the Aswan Dam was being built, and they flooded lots of Egypt, and lots of things were lost. And she was very interested in this, and her family saved up the money and gave her the money to go on this trip so that she could see all these things before they were flooded. So she's telling me, I was absolutely flabbergasted. The next thing I see is this Banam ground staff coming right through. Where have you been? I said, I've not been anywhere, I'm just sitting here with the passengers, we're all fine. It was a very bad tannoy system. I didn't hear the flight called. So because I didn't move.
You were busy getting the Aswan Dam.
Egyptology, and whatever you call it, So here's all these passengers. But the awful thing was, our flight went, because in those times they used to talk about block to block time, so it cost them money as long as the plane was on the ground. So they just went. So they said, right, we'll put you on another flight. So awful thing was, I had to go on a Lufthansa flight.
Why does that sound like a bad thing?
Because they were that bloody snobbish, you know. We
were Germans.
Yeah, just very German. So the passengers all go, and that was all right. But I'm in my full uniform, right?
Oh, so you're the enemy, Pan Am.
So they put me in the cockpit.
Oh, did they?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
And I'm in the cockpit.
That's like you getting near the driver.
Oh, God.
So it wasn't very long to go from Frankfurt to London. Captain's on the phone, he says, "Hello, Pan American. We have just had another experience," because they were the world's most experienced. They're like, "You have just had another experience. We have a Pan Am stewardess on board."
Wow.
We had to get off.
Were they old enemy pilots?
I don't know, but I mean, they just thought it was absolutely hysterical. But when I got off the plane in London, there was a big reception party for me, because the word had got that I'd been put off flight. So if you were put off flight, then you'd really, done something. So there was a big inquisition about that.
A big inquisition. I was listening to the Aswan Dam. I was having a chat about Egyptology.
But the passengers were brilliant, because as soon as they knew I was in trouble, they were all in trouble with me. They all said, "We didn't hear it, nobody heard it." So they all stuck up for me. They were really nice. Oh, it was hellish.
Oh, thank you, ladies.
Why did you do that?
Oh, God, there's times when you feel so inadequate.
Just love her.
No, you're saying
but there are really, you
I
think,
didn't know.
You do.
Listen, you're married to a man that introduced special fish suppers to Glasgow. You should be happy with that.
I remember going on a trip to Lourdes, right? And via Manchester, and from Glasgow to Manchester, and then Lourdes, and it was an overnight stay in Manchester, and then the next morning you get your trip. You go to a bus stop to the air terminus, you get to the airport and blah blah blah. My watch had stopped.
Oh dear.
So I'm wandering around the shopping mall in Manchester for 2 hours, then realising that my watch had stopped. That was a horrible feeling, because I should have been at the airport like an hour before, and running to this bus stop and seeing 2 nuns and thinking, oh, maybe they're going in that trip as well.
Of course,
all that, and then getting to the airport and running upstairs and getting to the check-in place, and people saying, "Mrs. Piacentini," and I'm thinking, how did they know? How did they know me? No wonder they've been calling my name for about an hour, you know how they call passengers.
That's right. Did you get there in the end?
Oh, thank God I did.
What a miracle. What a miracle.